say this genea, this generation, refers to sinners, that there are always going to be sinners. Well, that's obvious. Why say that? Of course there are always going to be sinners. They say genea is in the Septuagint used to translate the Hebrew word dor, which means like an evil generation. And Jesus is saying there will always be evil people until He comes. Well, that's no sign of anything any more than being Jews is a sign of anything, because that's the way it always is. Those are foreign to the context. Now, there are other people who say, and this would be a fifth angle on it, I guess, or fourth or fifth, that it refers to the people who see the birth of the nation Israel. The people who see the birth of the nation Israel. Well, where does it say that? It doesn't. But that's a very popular view. That's the Hal Lindsey, Late Great Planet, if you're old enough to have read that view. That the fig tree, because the fig tree in chapter 11 is Israel, that the fig tree in chapter 13 has to be Israel also. No. That's an illustration. An illustration is an illustration for the moment it's used as an illustration, and it can't be compared with other illustrations or used for other points of teaching or doctrine. Nothing here says it's Israel. It's simply saying this generation will not pass away until all those things take place. It doesn't say Israel. But there are many, many people who parked on this. 1948, Israel became a state. And what was said, and this was really popular through those years, millions of books were sold, that the generation alive when Israel becomes a state, because that's the fig tree budding, when Israel becomes a state, that generation will not all die out. And it was even stated that a generation is 40 years, and so Christ is going to come before 1988. Sorry, didn't come in 88, 98, 2008. Plus, as I said, Luke even says, when he gives a comparative of this, remember they're dialoguing back and forth and saying things different ways, that Jesus said, all the trees put forth their leaves and you know summer is near. He's not talking about one nation. There's no reason to identify this with Israel at all. That is just pure imagination. You were right the first time. I knew you were right. It means what it obviously means. The generation that sees the signs leading up to will see the event. That is to say, creation occurred in a 7-day period, right? And destruction will occur in a 7-year period. And if you're in there anyway, that generation is going to be around at the very end. It's not going to be drawn out. Very simple. The one who sees the leaves will see the summer. That generation that experiences the birth pains will see the birth of the kingdom. The generation that sees the leaves will see the judgment that begins the kingdom. That really is the answer to the question. How many days after? Well, did you notice that it says the Son of Man doesn't know? Nobody knows the days. There's a gap in there. How long is it? Somewhere in there, in the days and the hour, which no one knows. Now that leads me to a question. Who are the people that are going to be alive at that time? Who are they going to be? Who are the people alive at that time? Who's this going to be important to? Who's going to be reading this? Who are the readers that are going to read and say, I need to understand this? Who are they? Well, there will be non-believers, right? There'll be a world of non-believers, non-believing Gentiles. There'll be a world of non-believing Jews, sinners all over the planet. there will also be believers. There will also be believers. They will be in the time of tribulation. There will also be believers. There will also be believers. They will be in the time of tribulation.